Good evening and welcome to SEC Live, all right here on SEC at the Voice of College Football, the 34th edition from yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and a very special guest. He's a co-host on SEC Unfiltered, a co-host of the Power 2 on CFB Edition, which is about to be on its one-year anniversary on February 19th, 2026, a co-host of The Morning Drive with Dan and Cole on Sports Talk 790. And, of course, he's a managing editor of Texans Wire, the one and only himself, Cole Thompson, as we're going to be talking quite a lot about the SEC all right here on SEC at the Voice of College Football, including some storylines that happened today, like the Malzahn retirement. Let me tell you something, folks. You're going to be in for a wild ride. How you doing today, good buddy?
Jackson, I have never had a better intro than that. So number one, I got to deliver at this point. I'm excited to be on with you, man. Listen, I've watched your work before. You're fantastic.
Oh,
and to every Alabama fan out there, congratulations. The curse of seeing Gus Malzahn ruin your day is over. Like, it is officially done. There's no shot at Tallahassee. The Seminoles coming on in week 4 and ruining your season. Like, all that's in the past. So, that's a good thing. We can all rejoice. We can all sit here and say, thank God the Gus Bus has made his final stop in Tallahassee and not in Tuscaloosa, because Kalen DeBoer, brother, you cannot afford to lose to Gus Bus twice. Like, no. I can tell you right now, you can't afford to do that, man.
Man, I've got like the Ren and Stimpy song of Happy, Happy, Joy, Joy stuck in my head, especially hearing that bit of news. Like, Malzahn has retired. I've also got like the ding dong, the witch is gone, the witch is gone, the witch is gone.
Oh, my God. I mean, I can just tell you, I remember. So for anybody who doesn't know, like, I hate all 16 teams equally in the SEC. I hate all 136 teams equally, but one team, unfortunately, is the one I have the degree from, which is the University of Alabama. So, I remember watching as Gus Malzahn every single year would basically be like the Marvin Lewis of the SEC, which was in a year that you needed to have a win or you were going to be fired, the dude somehow was able to beat Alabama in the Iron Bowl. Like, it was just magic. Like, somehow, some way it happened. And you always ask yourself, it's like, how does he keep getting away with it? He'll lose to Kentucky. He'll go like 8-4, but one of those wins is against a top 15 Alabama team, and it's against Nick freaking Saban. Like of all the things, like, that was the kryptonite. Like, you look at him and you look at Freeze and you're asking yourself, it's like, how were those two able to get this done? But Kirby took forever to finally get a win. You look at all the other coaches that came from the tree and was like, yeah, they're not going to do it. Lane never did it. But yet somehow, some way, the Gus Bus was the one to be the overall thorn in the side of Nick Saban.
I know, right? And it was funny, though, because, I'm sure you remember it, but this was in like 2017, like where Auburn was 8-2, going against having number 1 Georgia come to their backyard. There were these highlights of how Georgia missed out on Kirby Smart and how they should have gotten him. And it was like every time you saw a headline of, oh, Malzahn's going to be fired if he doesn't win this. Malzahn sucks. Like I said, Malzahn was always winning on those games, but when everybody was talking about him, he didn't do so well.
No, that's the crazy thing. It's just like, it's the weirdest thing of all. Of like, hey, we're going to actually just let him kind of sit down and shut up and not worry about life in the world of the Gus Malzahn era. And then, but now when he's on the hot seat, don't worry. Jarrett Stidham, who somehow, some way people believed was going to pull off the upset a couple days ago with the Denver Broncos, he's able to beat Alabama. I mean, Bo Nix, terrible, horrendous. One of the worst quarterbacks we've seen in a while out of place like Auburn. But he beat Alabama. I mean, like, with Gus Malzahn at the helm. It's like, it's the weirdest storyline outside of the kick six, which, again, I'll admit openly, it's the greatest play in college football. Like, if anybody ever said, show a college football non-ball knower, what's the one play that excites you the most about like, as somebody who grew up in Tuscaloosa and somebody who grew up around Alabama and went to school, it's like the one play that you have to show everybody. You never talk about Gus Malzahn. But then you talk about the Iron Bowl, and it's like Gus Malzahn has got to be one of the top 15 names of the last 100 years that is going to be mentioned, and it ain't changing anytime soon. That's for dang sure.
Yeah, I mean, because it was like all the wins there for Alabama, Georgia were at home. Never could get a win against Georgia or Alabama on the road.
Right.
Yeah, because it was like the last time Auburn beat Alabama on the road was 2010, the comeback on Black Friday. Ugh, hate that game. 2005 against Georgia in Athens was the last time Auburn beat Georgia in Athens. And that was basically 9 months after the founding of YouTube.
Again, like I'm telling you, it's the Alabama blessing and curse at the same time. And this is why, like, I always give respect to Jordan Hare because I truly believe it's one of the best atmospheres in college football. But the voodoo shaman man that has his magic seep through the soil only shows up once a year. And it has to show up randomly against like a top 15 Texas A&M team when the game's played at Bryant-Denny Stadium. But when it's going to be played on the plains, the Iron Bowl is just weird madness. And it's got to end in some stupid fashion, whether it be 4 overtimes with John Mechie hitting the flying crane, or a 4th and 31, or the kick 6, or last season, you're up by double digits, and then somehow, some way, you allow them to work their way back, and then Isaiah Horton drop it on 4th and 2. Like Kalen DeBoer going for it on 4th and 2 and say, you know what, screw it. Right here, right now, we're going to do it. Like that's the Iron Bowl whenever you play a Jordan Hare. You know what? I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. And you know, it was so funny that I was looking at this thing from the Nets round because there was something about, you know, how Auburn's been, you know, anytime they have not had Malzahn on their coaching staff.
It's terrible, dude. It's one of the funniest things of looking at their record.
Oh, man. 08, 5-7, like good grief.
Yeah, 2007 was the year that college football decided to basically have an exorcism of who's who at the very top. Was the last time that Auburn was relevant when Gus Malzahn was on the staff.
Oh man, that's
just everything you need to know about the program.
Oh man, yeah, because like 07, they got knocked out by Georgia. You know, that was the first time Georgia's wearing their black uniforms, of course, and they lost to Mississippi State. That was with Sylvester Croom. And South Florida, they lost to them. That was on ESPN2 because like Virginia Tech LSU was on ESPN instead of ABC because of the fact that ESPN/ABC/Disney at that time still had that TV contract with NASCAR because like you didn't see like the Saturday night games led by Brent Musburger or Kirk Herbstreit be on ABC at 7 p.m. Central Time for that week.
I mean, I remember that team was 9-3, or I think they were 9-3 going into the bowl game against no, they were 8-4 going into the bowl game against Clemson that year. And they Chick-fil-A. I think it was the Chick-fil-A bowl, and it was the overtime game.
Yeah, it was on New Year's Eve, I believe.
Man. Yeah, I think you're right on that one.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember. I was 13 years old when that game happened. That was like the last time that Auburn was relevant outside of the comeback year, which, by the way, is still one of the greatest seasons of college football by a single player. And then 2013, which I will never forget. Tuscaloosa, Innisfree that night was losing its mind the second that Jimbo Fisher found his way into the end zone with a red zone strike to Kelvin Benjamin, and Hueytown native Jameis Winston was able to go ahead and exercise the demons and shut down Auburn and not allow the state of Alabama to, I think at that point it would have been 5 straight years of the state winning. No, 4 straight years of the state winning the national title. Yep. No, 5 straight years, because it went 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, and it would have been 13 that year. And then we went to the 14 college football playoff, and that was when God had everything lined up perfectly to where we knew that there were 4 teams, and now we have 12 teams, and now everybody gets a free pass.
Oh yeah, I mean somebody's upset no matter what. It's like
that's the thing, man. I can't be mad anymore because of like I was somebody who was adamant about when they went to 12 how much I hated it, and then there was like the next person who's like, "Hey, we're gonna go to 24," and I'm like, "We can shut that down and just enjoy 12 for like the next 10 years."
Man, like 24. Oh man, that's something. I mean, you want to see an 8-4 team get in, okay?
It's gonna happen eventually. Like, I cannot wait to see the arguments between people, Jackson, when we're talking about an 8-4 Southern Miss team being compared to an 8-4 Vanderbilt squad, and why the Vanderbilt team got in at 8-4. Meanwhile, how dare you leave out that 10-2 UNLV roster because they went to like that's the problem. Like you're always gonna have somebody complaining. Like it's never gonna go away. How dare we not have that 25th ranked team just make the college football play? They were the first team out, and they were the last team ranked. That's gonna be the one that pisses off everybody. So you know what? Eventually, we're just going to go ahead and not care about the regular season, but yours truly will always care about the regular season.
Same here.
I love college football. It's my bread and butter. It's my livelihood. It's the one thing that I've always been beyond impressed with. Growing up in the state of Texas, doing my livelihood of just football in general, and then go to the SEC and its prime and heyday. And now, hopefully, eventually, you see the SEC get back to that. But let's be real. Right now, it is a dark and desolate time for that conference.
Yeah, I'm getting pretty worried about the non-conference rivals because I know like some people were just kind of like happy about, oh, Notre Dame, USC's gone. Well, that's a loss for Notre Dame. That's good for us. Okay, well, this could hurt Florida State, Georgia Tech, close South Carolina, Kentucky, Louisville. Getting a look because I mean, Kentucky, South Carolina is a nice game and all, but nobody's sitting there thinking Kentucky, South Carolina rivalry week. I don't think.
No, but it still is a damn good game. I think not enough people talk about that.
Yeah. But like Georgia, Florida, that's always a great game. But it's like I always say, still put that game on the first Saturday of November.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. I wouldn't fight back.
Yeah. But we gotta have a commissioner soon and fast, and you know, just have somebody that will
what, saying he doesn't do his job well enough? Is that what you're talking about, dude?
Huh?
You talking about saying he's not doing his job well enough?
The NCAA is not doing their job.
Oh, you're talking about college football commissioner. Gotcha.
Yeah, college football commissioner.
Yeah, but then unfortunately, we're going to have everybody follow the same rules and guidelines, and we're going to have salary caps for the end for college football. And you know what? Nobody wants that.
True. That is true. But you know, I was watching a little bit of you and Chris the other day on SEC Unfiltered, and y'all were talking about the hot seat tiers for 2026. And of course, you know, you got Sark at the not going anywhere tier.
Yeah.
And Kirby's not going anywhere.
I mean, unless he's under the retirement chair, then by that means.
Oh, yeah. Elko's definitely at the not going anywhere tier, but it wouldn't hurt if Texas A&M can get that Texas monkey off their back.
Well, I mean, they haven't beaten Texas since 2010. I mean, like, we're going back over a decade because they didn't play the game, and then we're going back an extra 5 years because of when they started to play the game again. Texas won the last one in 2011, walk-off field goal with Justin Tucker. And then the last 2 years, Texas has been able to win both those games.
Yeah. Yeah, 2010 was a pitiful year for Texas, but it was a pretty it was a good year, I guess, because I mean, like they tied for the Big 12 South Division at that time. But yeah, Tannehill stepped up to the plate, although they couldn't quite get things done against LSU in the Cotton Bowl that year.
No, it's terrible that year. And then the next year, Sherman was fired. They bring in Kevin Sumlin from Houston, and there was a kid by the name of Johnny Manziel that was looking to go play quarterback, and he got an offer to go to Texas. And they said, we're only going to let you come here if you play defensive back. He said, screw that. I'm going to go down to College Station. And he ends up becoming a Folklore. And I remember being in the stands that game against Texas A&M. I think that everybody kind of knew, or they didn't want to admit it out loud, the second that he caught the pass that was batted down and then threw it a second time and found Ryan Smoot at the back of the end zone. I think that was when everybody kind of like inside Bryant-Denny Stadium like took a giant exhale and said, okay, yeah, we're going to be in a lot of trouble this year. Like, it's going to get pretty bad pretty quickly. And lo and behold, that was the game where Johnny Manziel secured the Heisman Trophy.
Oh, agreed. Yeah. And also just kind of like looking at the other coaches, you know, you got the do it again tier. You got DeBoer and Heupel in that do it again tier. Cause like you're hoping to see some more progress. Like, I would like to see DeBoer get the Crimson Tide to the semifinals or
Sure.
basically the national title. I know Heupel needs some of that adult Bobby Hill riz to kind of bring it back. Yeah, it's funny though, because it was funny watching the Music Scene Bowl because like Brett Bielema looks like old Butthead from the current Beavis and Butthead revival. And Josh Heupel was like adult Bobby Hill. It was basically the Mike Judge cartoon character bowl at that point.
No, like the thing with like it's two different things. So like I didn't like doing when I did the hot tier ranking, like the hot seat rankings. I want to be fair because I don't think that DeBoer is going to get fired next year. I don't think that Venables is going to get fired next year, and I don't think that Heupel will get fired next year. But I feel like each one of them faces their own little bit of scrutiny from the fan bases because of, you have the 6 and 7 season for a team for Venables, and you have the 10-win season. Then you have a 6 and 7 season, your year one in the SEC, and then you go 10 and 3, and you have one of the rigorous schedules in college football, and yet still you come out on the other side unscathed and you beat Alabama once again. But then you look awful in the playoff game, so it's like, okay, well, what is it? It's this roller coaster of emotions of we just want to be able to say constantly we're going to be at the level of expectation that we have for ourselves internally at a place like Oklahoma. And then for Alabama, what it is, Kalen DeBoer openly took the job that was, in my opinion, the greatest challenge in college football history, replacing the greatest coach to ever live. And there's always going to be the scrutiny because of Alabama fans, whether or not you want to admit it, Alabama fans will always compare him to Nick Saban and what Saban did and how Saban did this and what Saban was able to accomplish with that. And to a certain extent, I get it, but also you have to let him kind of build his own repertoire because let's just call a spade, Jackson. Alabama hadn't won a national title since 2020. Nick Saban didn't retire in 2021. He retired in 2023. So it's like he had 3 more years of still having good teams, but not elite teams, and things were going south, or at least not to a certain level. And so he takes him to the playoff. Yeah. But still, there are people who say, well, the Florida State game is a black eye, and the Georgia game in the SEC championship is a black eye, and the Indiana game, we don't care that Indiana went 16-0 this past year. It's Indiana, and we're freaking Alabama. You should be better than that. So that became another subject matter. And then you throw in Josh Heupel, and Heupel is, Tennessee fans, I think for the most part, understand we're in the best place that we could ever ask for, at least underneath this current regime. Because I don't know how many people remember Tennessee at one point was an elite team in college football. They were, in my opinion, one of the premier programs in the sport. And then Philip Fulmer said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and call it a career, and I'm going to go into the athletic booster administration side of things. And we're going to proceed to end up going, hire Derek Dooley and struggle, hire Butch Jones and become champions of life and struggle, hire Jeremy Pruitt and go through NCAA allegations and struggle, and not get to a double-digit winning season for nearly a decade. And here comes this guy from UCF. It's like, oh, well, we hired him at the very last second because of our coach got in trouble and we had to fire him. And he ends up getting them to 10 wins with Hendon Hooker. They beat Alabama. They win the third Saturday in October for the first time in over a decade. They make the college football playoff with, in my opinion, one of the weaker quarterbacks that we have seen and overhyped players in college football in a year where the offense truly relied so heavily on its run game. And yet still the following season, they go get a quarterback that comes on in from App State / UCLA in what was the first real trade of college football. Doesn't have an entire spring, gets there in the middle of summer, impresses where he leads the conference in passing yards, and they go 8-4, but they don't beat a single team with a winning record. And so then you ask yourself, okay, what is it? Because there is a part of Tennessee fans that are spoiled in terms of, we believe after going to the college football playoff the first time, we should be doing this at a consistent rate. So it's just like with him, it's more so, I want to be able to see him do it one more time to guarantee the 10-win seasons are going to be on the plenty. You're going to be able to continue to recruit at a high-end level. I love what Tennessee did this offseason by bringing in Jim Knowles. They did a good job of bringing in some great players with experience underneath that defense. You have a good veteran returning talent. You're not losing your starting running back. You still have stability on the offensive line. They're a solid team, but I also know that there are going to be fans out in Knoxville who say this is not the expectation 8-4, which is a good season. I think a lot of people get lost in that because of all we focus in on is, well, did you make the college football playoff? Like, if you didn't make the college football playoff, you sucked. You were terrible. Nobody cares about you. You don't belong in that conversation. But on the flip side, the way that I view it is, well, yeah, that's fine. But at the same time, let's see what you're able to continue to build and accomplish. And if he does it one more time, well, now we're talking about 3 10-win seasons in 6 years. Pretty good start. Pretty good resume, in my opinion, for a place like Rocky Top, where the expectation should be to go compete for national titles. And you didn't have that for almost a decade.
Yeah, I mean, because like Heupel has done a pretty fantastic job, but it's like the one problem is he can't win the big games on the road.
Right.
That is his big issue, obviously.
Well, he did beat Florida this year in the Swamp for the first time in over 2 decades. I mean,
Yep.
nobody could do that at Tennessee. Like, nobody was like, I thought that was one of the craziest stat lines reading it going into this year, that Tennessee had not won in the Swamp against any Florida team.
No YouTube.
I was gonna say, you're going all the way back. You're going back to a time to where we still had rotary phones. Like, we were at a point where the cell phone was like the size of your head, like, or the flip phone was like, you were Jackson. We were at a time, the last time that they won, you were at a time period where you had to pay for minutes and text messages, and every letter, you had a certain allotment of letters that you were allowed to use before the phone bill started running on up and your parents got on your ass. Like, that's the level of the last time that Tennessee played against Florida and won. That's how long back you got to go.
Oh yeah, it was a long time, and that was the Ron Zook era of Florida where they were just not doing so hot. Man,
Exactly.
yeah, it is nuts. Just like seeing Tennessee just come close but no cigar. Just like thinking about that, but then like Heupel gets it done, and even though it was like a terrible Florida team that was just quitting on 2025 already, it's still a big win because like he made history in Knoxville, and it's gonna be the last time you play Florida on an annual basis.
And you know what? That's a travesty in college football. I will die on that take. That is one of those few that I'm like, I get that we're going to have the rivalry somewhat taken away, and there's a couple games that you're not going to have on a consistent basis. That is one that I believe is a staple of college football that does not get talked about enough.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, because it was like the 90s, you had like some of the best cartoons ever, and you have Florida, Tennessee, and all college football. Everybody talked about Florida, Tennessee. And 2000, 2001, everybody talked about it. But I think a lot of it had to do with the fact was, it kind of dropped down in quality in the 2000s because like it was always Florida winning. The 2010s, you had some good games with, Tennessee just blowing a 2-touchdown lead 2015. 2016, Tennessee ended that losing streak as a whole. And everybody was like, surely Butch Jones going to get us that SEC East Division title now. But, of course, they blew it. And they were like, oh, we're champions of life. But then afterwards, 2017, Florida wins by a Hail Mary. Other than that, it was the 2018-19. I don't think anybody was really thinking about it all that much. But, like, the only one we could really think of for the 2010s are like the times where we see Tennessee winning or Florida winning, but 2025 being the last time it's on an annual basis, and Tennessee ended that losing streak in Gainesville.
No, that's what I'm saying is that like that's like the one thing with Heupel to where I thought that this season was somewhat of a lost year simply because of you nearly had Georgia. You had them on the ropes. Like, I don't know if you know this, Jackson, but the quarterback with the most passing yards and the highest passer rating in SEC history against Kirby Smart in the first quarter of a game is Joey Aguilar. Like, of all the quarterbacks that he has gone up against in his tenure, the highest rated passer rating in SEC football history when it comes to Kirby Smart is Joey Aguilar. And you blow that game because Drew Gilbert can't make a kick in regulation, so you go to overtime in that one. Then you have the Alabama game, and the pick six happens right before halftime, so that ends up taking away momentum from you there. The game against Oklahoma, John Mateer is struggling to throw the football, but it's their defense is so freaking elite. It shows on up, and you lose that game. And then, of course, you lose the Vanderbilt game, which you're not supposed to lose to Vanderbilt because Diego Pavia is running his mouth all offseason saying that we're not going to be little brother of the state. But you lose that one. But the saving grace was you ended the streak of losing in the Swamp. Like, that was the one thing that Heupel could hold his hat on and say, we never saw Dooley do it. We never saw Pruitt do it. We never saw Butch Jones do it. But I did do it. And that's a win in my book.
Oh, yeah. Humongous win. And I see that you have Shane Beamer and I'm looking at a levy on the get it done or get out tier.
Somebody has to be in last place. Like that's the problem, Jackson. Is like everyone is going to sit here and go, well, you just hate on my team. Somebody's got to come in last, guys.
Right.
It's nothing personal. But like, think about it for a second. You have one guy that is going into year 3 of the SEC. And I don't know if you know this, Jackson, but Ryan Silverfield and Alex Golish have as many wins in the SEC as Jeff Levy.
Yeah.
And they're going into their first year as SEC head coaches. At some point, I understand that you're going through a giant rebuild. I understand that the situation was terrible with the passing of Mike Leach, that you bring in Zach Arnett. It was never a good fit. But results are results, and you got to get the job done at some point. That's just the bottom line, no questions asked. Like, if you can't do that, then unfortunately you're going to be shown the door. And especially when you have 3 years in the SEC and you bring in a talent like Mario Taylor. And then on the flip side, when it comes to, Shane Beamer went from being one of the most sought after names in terms of high profile figures in the conference for last season with what he did, going 9-3, changing the identity, going out and spending money in the portal and bringing in really, really, really under the radar players. And they all transition. They pan out great. And they're on the verge of beating Alabama. And honestly, I still die on this take. I think the most egregious call in the last 10 years in the SEC is the callback of the Nicky Manwari interception against LSU. Because if that play ends up holding, they win that game. They go to the college football playoff. They're in. And you're talking about them going 9-3 to then immediately behind the North Sellers falling short and going 4-8.
God.
And these are all your people. And Jackson, the thing about a place like South Carolina is the roller coaster of all teams currently in the SEC. It's downhill going 6-6 with a quarterback that is supposed to be a graduate recruit, like assistant head coach, to climbing your way on up, to beating Clemson, to beating Tennessee with Joe Milton, to then crashing all the way down and going 5-7, to then climbing your way up and then putting yourself in that position to where you're 9-3, potentially 10-2, to then crashing all the way down and going 4-8 because if you make bad hires. So, at some point, there's got to be some middle ground. The saving grace for a guy like Shane Beamer is he has wins against ranked opponents, and he constantly is being able to be impressive in the Palmetto Bowl. He's beaten Dabo multiple times. That has to count for something. Yeah. But outside of that, you're talking about a team that constantly finds itself going from 8-4 to 4-8, going from 5-7 to 9-3. You just want to find a balance at this point. And everyone else in the SEC to a certain extent can say that. And you can't say that about South Carolina.
Honestly, I could see South Carolina just doing what they do once again, where I'm getting this Malzahn vibe from Shane Beamer, where it's when nobody talks about South Carolina in the preseason, they thrive when nobody talks about them. But when everybody talks about them, they're a complete, total disaster and fall apart. They're closer to having a drink at the bar at the Long Branch with Miss Kitty than they are getting to a playoff.
They're interesting because I also think that they killed it this past season in the portal. Once again, you're talking about not a lot of big-time names. Ja'Carius Pickens is a stud. And Alabama was going after him, and LSU really wanted him, and Miami was going after him. So, a lot of teams that we talk about being fixtures of the college football world wanted Ja'Carius Peak from NC State. And South Carolina did everything possible to guarantee that he was not leaving Willie B without a contract. And that was a good thing because they got themselves a cornerstone, potential future first-round left tackle prospect. Good player. Very solid, really solid name that you can build around. But then they also added in some guys like Nitro Tuggle from Purdue that just no one's really going to know him outside of name, but he's got incredible speed and he can be an elusive playmaker in space. They went and they brought in Caleb Herring from Tennessee. It's a really good defensive end that like kind of flew under the radar this past year for the Volunteers. And now he is going to be joining forces opposite of Dylan Stewart. And they brought in the Collins brothers, Kelby and Kelvin from Arkansas State. And those are going to be two dudes that are probably fixtures of the defensive line. And they went and they brought in some really good linebackers. And they got like two running backs, including Christian Clark from Texas. And like, they're not big names, but at the same time, they're names to where you're going to probably know exactly who they are next season when they go take the field at Columbia. And that's what I think is a big selling point for a guy like Shane Beamer, is he constantly is able to find the names that nobody is talking about. But whenever they get onto campus, they just seem to hit.
Yeah. And, you know, you cover in a lot of the NFL. So, you know, like how the Lions have the Bobby Lane curse?
Oh, yeah.
I'm wondering if Mississippi State has something similar to that, because I've always said that they're kind of like
don't curse that team. Don't curse that team.
Yeah,
they are the greatest college football trivia question of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah, because it's like I don't know why, but it's always like Mississippi State always gets stuck with some sort of bad luck. I don't know what it is, but it's always something with them.
I'm telling you, dude, they are the greatest trivia question of all time, because I will promise you in about 15 years from now, there'll be somebody at a sports bar that says, who was the first team ever ranked number 1 in the college football playoff rankings? And somebody's going to go out and they're going to say, well, it was Ohio State because they won the national title, or it was Alabama, or it was Clemson because they had Dabo at the time. And the number 1 team ever ranked first overall in the college football playoff rankings was Mississippi State. And ever since that moment, it has just been nothing but heartbreak for them, because the following week they lost to Alabama with Dak Prescott. They cost themselves the number 1 spot. They played, I think, that year in the Orange Bowl. They won that game. Dan Mullen goes to Florida afterwards. They hire Joe Moorhead. It doesn't go according to plan. After that, they go hire Mike Leach, one of the best hires that we could ever see for culture and just weirdness meeting with vibe technology. And he ends up winning the Egg Bowl over Lane Kiffin. And then after that, he unfortunately passes away. They win the game. And it wasn't the Gator Bowl. It was the ReliaQuest Bowl. I forget what it was called at the time. I'm blanking on it. I think it was the Outback Bowl still. Anyways, they fly they go to the place with the actual pirate ship, like inside the building, to win the game of that team. Arnett takes on over as head coach. They suck. They fire him after getting mollywopped by Texas A&M, who the exact same day fires Jimbo Fisher. They hire a guy in Jeff Levy that at the time was a very well sought after name, because Zach Selman knew him from his time at Oklahoma. The runner-up for the job was John Summerall from Troy, who just took the Florida job. And now they're on the precipice of once again going to having 1 win in 2 years of conference play.
Man, it's like holy Toledo. I hope the Bulldogs can have a better season in 2026, but that's why I say hope, because I'm not sure, but we'll definitely wait and see. Hope that Kamari Taylor comes back for week 1. Like, he should be back by week 2,
but they're facing a lot of pressure, Jackson, because like, think about this for a second. They openly chose to play in that bowl game. Like, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm like, listen, any opportunity that you get those 15 a lot of practice, and that's like that. Like some people don't understand the reason why I'm so adamant against like the thing that happened with Notre Dame. And I know there's somebody in the comment section that has ND in their name. I'm not.
Oh, my buddy Will ND, he's in the chat.
So listen, I love Notre Dame's roster going into this year. And I also think that Notre Dame was good enough to go play for a national title. Like, I do. I also don't feel bad for you when you have 2 losses on your schedule. Like, and that's for any team in college football. I think it was wrong what the committee did, but regardless, those 15 practices aren't allotted to you if you don't play in the bowl game. And so for a team like Mississippi State that has a lot of young talents, that has a lot of up-and-coming players. That was so valuable for them. But at the same time, you kind of got to show up at the game as well. And it just felt like a Wake Forest team that was good, but never really elite at anything, to be able to dismantle with Robbie Ashford of all quarterbacks. I think that's the part that, like, still to this day, I'm like looking back and going, Robbie Ashford, the guy who struggled without Lenore Sellers and had to fill on in for that game against LSU because if Sellers gets hurt in the second half, that guy gets revenge on the SEC and beats them and looks incredible. And it's his last college football game. That dude beat Mississippi State. Like, a part of me is also like, you just got to show on up. I'm not asking for much. I'm just asking for you to show on up. And now that you didn't, there's a bigger target on your back because of there's things that you got to be able to correct.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. And, of course, we've got the number one quarterback of 2027, Elijah Haven, looking to make his decision soon. It was going to be in January, but he's looking to make it sometime in March or April or the merry month of May. And he's choosing between Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, and Florida. And he took visits to all of these schools. But he said Alabama is definitely one that stands out. And we're going to wait and see what happens on whether he commits to Alabama. Because if he does, that quarterback room is going to be stacked for 2027 and beyond.
I'm very interested in seeing what this year's quarterback room looks like. But naturally, if you add on again a guy like Elijah Haven, it's going to be massive. But the thing is that, Jackson, like, no ill will to Ty Simpson, because I think Ty Simpson did a phenomenal job in his 1 year as a starter. But to me, the thing that I've been really interested in is seeing what Keelan Russell can look like in this offense for Ryan Grubb.
Oh, yeah.
And I say Keelan Russell, and it's not a shot at Austin Mack, because Austin Mack, again, was recruited by Ryan Grubb. He was recruited by Kalen DeBoer. He was with him at Washington, came on down from Seattle to Tuscaloosa. He may end up being a really good fit. But when I look at Keelan Russell and what they're adding in offensively around him and what they have returning and what they've done to try to build the offensive line, this to me feels like the closest we're going to get to the Washington Kalen DeBoer offense. And that's why you hired him. Like, you didn't hire him because of what he did in Tuscaloosa or what he did as the play caller at Indiana or what he did at Fresno State. You hired him because he had 3 almost 1,000-yard receivers in his offense in Seattle. You hired him because of the offensive line was stable and you had multiple first-round picks. You hired him because you had one constant running back in Dylan Johnson that was able to make plays. You hired him because you had good special teams. Like, you hired him because of a certain quarterback by the name of Michael Penix Jr., who in any other year alongside with Bo Nix probably would have won the Heisman Trophy. Like, probably would have walked away with the award and nobody would have batted a second eye. And Keelan Russell has so many of the same intangibles that you think are going to be able to fit that same mold that puts you over the edge and makes you feel like what we hired you for is finally arrived in year 3. And while the wide receiver room is not going to have a Jeremy Bernard, who, by the way, was a stud, and I thought was flying under the radar for the last 2 years, and Isaiah Horton, who, was a very good number 3 receiver and had his moments this past year, and you're going to rely a lot on Lazier Brooks, and you're going to rely a lot on Rico Scott and some of the younger guys, and then Ryan Williams to step on up. There just is so much to like about what you have currently in the room. Another year with Grubb in the system, and Keelan Russell sitting for a year to truly bask and break in what is supposed to be the things that you want about this offense. That is going to be so enticing. I think it's only going to grow and mature with him.
Oh, man. It's going to be interesting to see like the 2026 QB room. I think Alabama will likely make their decision on who's QB definitely before week 1 against East Carolina. But, like just seeing like all those guys, seeing like Tamala, and Russell and Seaborn and Kawa. And then you add Elijah Haven to that mix for 2027 and beyond. That quarterback room is stacked. That's stacked.
What I will say is Alabama, for as much as you can like that quarterback room, one of the things that I'm really interested in, and this is my own personal, just belief on how I view him as a coach. And nobody can argue with me because there are still videos out that back this up. I believe John Summerall is going to be the next big name in college football.
Oh, yeah.
I believe that John Summerall is going to be changing. I have been gung-ho swinging the fence and speaking it into existence. There is a video of me somewhere on the SEC Unfiltered channel of me losing my mind that they hired Jeff Lebby over John Summerall.
Wow.
I was vehemently annoyed because I thought the right hire was supposed to be John Summerall. Like, I was so sold that was the right guy. And he brings in Buster Faulkner as his offense coordinator. And Buster Faulkner is one of those names that, like, the second you hear that he is just a part of the team, you're like, that's going to be really intriguing, especially for being able to flip a guy, such as you have with Haven, that's looking at a Georgia, looking at an Auburn, looking at an Alabama, and knowing that Florida wants to spend the money and wants to be able to put their resources and really say that we're just as talented or we have just the amount of resources that can be able to go ahead and bring in a certain specialty. That's a guy that I am fully convinced is going to be able to land whoever the hell he wants.
Oof, there we go. That's going to be a win right there. That's going to be huge, man. I'm looking forward to seeing where Florida is going to be heading in the next few years. Because, like, if they can get Haven to commit to them, that's going to be a dynamic duo, Haven and Summerall.
Yeah. As long as Buster Faulkner's there, I'm not really worried about it. I've recently gotten a lot of heat because of I said not too long ago. I think the best running back in the SEC, talent for talent, pound for pound, just overall playmaker, is Jaden Baugh. Now, again, I'm not saying production, because production, I'd be wrong. Like Keywan Lacey, Ahmad Hardy, they absolutely deserve their flowers. I think that they're both top 3 running backs going back in 2026. But you're giving me Buster Faulkner with an offense that's going to be very run-oriented, with a guy that's coming off of an 1,100-yard season where he wasn't properly utilized. There were so many Florida games this past year I remember watching and just saying constantly, why is 13 not getting the ball more than 15 times a game? Why are you trying to force DJ Lagway to throw it 40 times? And it wasn't like it was because the score was so out of left field or out of reach. It was because of you have an opportunity to trust your best player to move the rock. And you're instead saying, hey, you know what? We're going to give it to the guy that constantly can't throw the football and is under a lot of pressure and is underwhelming this year. Let's just go ahead and see what he does. I thought that was a big issue.
Oh, yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens for sure. I'm getting pretty excited about what the future brings for a lot of these teams in all of the SEC and in college football. Ooh, Will's got a question, and he's got a question for you, Cole, about Summerall, where he says, what makes you think Summerall is the real deal? He went to Troy, which was built by Neil Brown, and Tulane, which was built by Willie Fritz. He has never built a successful program. What do you say?
Sure. All right, so let's start off with this. Neil Brown was not the coach at the time when he was hired. So let's just start there. Neil Brown was already 2 years into his tenure at West Virginia. Chip Lindsey was the coach at Troy when he got hired. So he did build Troy from what it was. And Will, I don't mean to be disrespectful to you because you're right. Willie Fritz did turn the program around at a place like Tulane, but he also took 30% of his roster and another 40% went to the transfer portal that year. So John Summerall in his first season had to build Tulane back up to what it was. And the following year, his star quarterback, his star running back, his star tight end, 3 of his star wide receivers, 3 of his star offensive linemen, 6 of his star defensive players all went to the transfer portal. And he had to take 40 new players in the portal and then build Tulane again. And I don't know if you know this, Will, he beat his former quarterback in Darian Mensah with Jake Retzlaff, who came on in at the very last second because he got kicked out of BYU. And that team with Darian Mensah went on to win the ACC. So I think that when I look at what he's been able to build via the portal, he's done a pretty freaking good job. That's just my opinion of it. So we can sit here and act like that, yes, there's been a program and an identity put in motion. But at the same time, John Summerall had to rebuild Troy from what Chip Lindsey destroyed. And he won 2 Sun Belt titles with it. And then he went on over to New Orleans, and he ended up playing for another conference title, and he won that one. And then after he did that, he ended up going to the college football playoff. So I think he did a pretty good job.
There we go. And you can catch this clip all right here on SEC at the Voice of College Football. Like, comment, subscribe, click on the notification bell so you never miss another video. Well, we've got less than a few minutes, and I want to get your quick takeaways from the Senior Bowl. Like, what did you think about it for, when you saw a little bit of it on Saturday?
I think that the biggest takeaway that I had is that, like, right now, Garrett Nussmeier playing hurt all year was very evident because he was probably the most improved player at the Senior Bowl. That's a guy that is going to be QB3 in this year's draft. Like, Ty Simpson's going to go QB2. He may end up not going first round. I personally wouldn't take him first round. I would say that he is a second round pick right now. But if he ends up going first round, there's going to be a QB3. I think Garrett Nussmeier's earned that. It was very clear that he wasn't in a system that was dealing with, being able to protect him in the offensive line. He was dealing with a slew of injuries throughout the year. That's why they shut him down after Brian Kelly got fired. But there's so much to like about his game. There's so much to believe that he is going to be able to transition to at least a solid stopgap starter. He comes from a football background, dad being an OC, going from the college game to the NFL game to now being the OC in New Orleans. He comes from that overall ideology of being able to probably, I think, pick up a lot of the pieces at a quick pace. So I think that that's probably my biggest takeaway is that he locked up QB3 as of right now. And then Colton Hood's a guy that I think a lot of people kind of slept on this past year. But Colton Hood was damn good. Like, you watch him at Tennessee, they didn't have Jamal McCoy for the entire season because he was dealing with a torn ACL. They didn't have Boot Carter for most of the year. And it felt like most times Tennessee's secondary was just getting gassed and they were being torn apart. And there were so many freaking issues that came where it came to the explosives downfield on plays that weren't designed toward Colton Hood. And that was a guy that came on in from Colorado, and he probably put himself in the conversation of a top 40 pick from an SEC perspective. As Will points out, Malachi Fields killed it. Very, very, very good Senior Bowl trip. There's a guy by the name of Tyron Montgomery who came in from John Carroll University. That's a D3 school. The funny thing about him is that he ended up actually walking on to LSU as a basketball player, and he was trying to kill it at that. He ended up losing out because of COVID hit. And after COVID hit, he didn't have a plan in motion. So his brother was a high school quarterback and he would run routes for him. And after he would run routes for him, he started just to really pick up kind of like a little bit of concept when it came to how to play football, because he never played football playing at junior high or at high school. So he goes to Nichols University out in Louisiana. He does really well there. He instead goes to Division III John Carroll, and he sets multiple records while there. And he kills at the Senior Bowl and goes from being a guy that nobody is talking about to now probably getting invited to the combine and having an opportunity to get drafted. So that's kind of the beauty of what the Senior Bowl is. Like, there's so many names out there that where you look back and say, I remember when this kid started to gain a lot of momentum, and they may never end up being like the first round pick and getting the millions of dollars, but they end up doing a lot of good for their career. Like, Nussmeier is one that I think is guaranteed put himself as QB3, top 45, top 50 selection. I think that you look at Colton Hood, another guy that's going to be top 45, top 50 selection. And then you look at some guys that just probably kind of flew under the radar. They're eventually going to get their name called because of it. Like Caleb Banks is a perfect example. He played like 3 games this past year for Florida, And everyone, okay, well, who's this kid from Florida when they were like a 4-8 team? And you look back and you're like, oh, well, he didn't play. Well, I was speaking to some of my scouting buddies, and they think already he's going to be a first round pick.
Ooh,
Now they're talking about him being a top 15 selection.
that's going to be good. That's going to be really good. And, for some of the guys that are really high in the mock drafts, one thing to always remember is just because you're really high in the mock draft does not mean you're automatically going to be high, because you got the draft combine and you're going to be doing a lot of interviews behind the scenes. So it's about what you do in the combines, what you do inside, outside, on and off the field.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, because like Shedeur Sanders, last year, top draft pick. Everybody's got him as a top draft pick.
Come on. No, okay, come on, Jackson. Nobody had him as a top draft pick besides Mel Kiper. And
Mel Kiper. Yeah, Mel Kiper.
Well, Mel Kiper gets to go ahead and gloat because if he's a Pro Bowler, with 3 more interceptions than touchdowns, but that Pro Bowl nod.
Yeah, it like listening to Mel Kiper is like, for NFL draft, it's like listening to Jim Cramer for financial advice.
Why are you listening to Jim Cramer, dude?
Huh?
Why are you listening to Jim Cramer?
Easy. Because they got bad advice.
At least you're willing to admit it. That's I guess the best part.
Yeah, because it's like, like I'm not listening to Kiper for draft takes. Because it was like, I remember looking at Anthony Richardson for 2023 one year. All they showed was the one highlight against Utah, but they didn't show they had like 9 of 27 completed passes against Florida State on Black Friday. It's like, okay, that's going to be disaster zone right there.
Sure.
Disaster zone. And here we go. Let's do a fastest 1 minute, 15 seconds. Who's got the toughest schedule entering the 2026 season for the SEC? Go.
I think it's Kentucky. I really do. Like Kentucky, week 2, they open up against Alabama, and that's their first game in SEC play. Will Stein, welcome to the SEC. And while you added in a lot of good pieces, like I love Kenny Minchie. I think that they're going to be a really solid team. Afterwards, you have to face off against Texas A&M. You get a couple games off. It was South Alabama, South Carolina. Who knows what they are? And then you go through that stretch of LSU, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. You get the bye week, no problem. Then you wake on back up and you get to travel on the road to Tennessee, Florida, Missouri, and Louisville to close out the year. And I think Louisville is going to be a contender in the ACC. Like, they may end up being one of the more physical teams and one of the more slept on rosters in terms of how they play. I just don't think they're going to get a lot of wins.
Oh, yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the first year of the Will Stein era. I mean, I want to see if he can really get them to where, like, Bear Bryant had them in the 40s and early to mid 50s.
Well, Mark Stoops just was the all-time winningest coach there. I mean, like, they fired the guy because of he said he wanted to go to Texas A&M and then had to walk back in the locker room. It's like, hey guys, my bad. Like, I want to stay around here. Like, he lost the locker room at that point, but still, I mean, let's be real, that was the greatest coach in program history. He ran your course.
Yeah, I mean, like, Mark Stoops was like dominating Florida football. You don't see that in Kentucky football.
No, you had 10-win seasons on the regular. Like every 2 or 3 years, it was like, oh, look at that. Terry Wilson, Will Levis. Look at us now go ahead and put ourselves in the conversation for top 15 finishes.
Oh, man. But that is one thing for sure. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Kentucky. And, for those who don't know about the magic you're creating, tell the people they can find you, Cole.
Yeah, if you want to listen to me, you can go to Sports Talk 790. I'm on iHeartMedia. I do a morning drive radio show here in Houston, Texas from 6 to 10 a.m. with Dan Matthews. If you want to go ahead and watch my work over at SEC Unfiltered, we're on the race to 30,000 subscribers. We do 2 live streams per week. On top of that, we also do some one-on videos. If you want to go over to College Football Addiction, me, TJ Pittenger, Tom Hanfin, talk more of the broad perspective of college football. And, of course, you can always follow me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson for all your stupid college football takes.
Tell your friends, your family, and the cashiers at pubs about the magic that Cole brings on Mr. Cole Thompson on X/Twitter and on Texans Wire, CFB Addiction for the Power 2, Sports Talk 790 in the early mornings on the weekdays, and on SEC Unfiltered with Chris Phillips. And also, you can check me out, Jackson Johnson 979, where I'm 270 subs away for that magic number 1,000, where I've got some upcoming episodes of the Jacksonian with Mike Debate of Patriots on SI. and Mookie Alexander of SB Nation for the Seahawks site previewing Super Bowl 60. And for more updates, what we've got going on SEC at the Voice of College Football, Alabama at the Voice of College Football, and the Jats. So you can check me out on Jacksonville CFP on @/Twitter and on Instagram. It's Jats543-908. And with that being said, like, comment, subscribe, click on the notification bell so you never miss the reveal whatsoever. And we will see y'all Wednesday night. Take care, everybody.